Ever stumbled upon something so simple it's brilliant,
Mm.
but so easily overlooked?
Yeah.
Today's deep dive is all about one of those hidden gems,
Yeah.
Code 10.
Oh, right.
We're digging into Stephen Wolfram's work,
Right.
and let me tell you, this computational rule,
Yeah.
it's like a magic trick
Okay.
that reveals something profound about the way the universe might just work.
Interesting. So, Wolfram, he describes his own aha moment with Code 10.
Mhm.
It was back in 1984, and he was
Right.
really deep in research
Okay.
on these things called cellular automata.
Okay.
Imagine a grid, like a checkerboard, where each square or cell
Right.
changes color based on simple rules.
Like
Think,
Game of Life.
yeah, like Game of Life, but even more basic.
Right, like those old school computer games with super simple graphics.
Mhm.
So what's the story with Code 10? Did Wolfram just stumble on it?
He almost missed it entirely.
Oh, wow.
Really.
Really?
You see, Code 10, it generates these wide, sprawling patterns.
Yeah.
Back then, computer displays were much more limited.
Right.
So Wolfram only saw a sliver of what Code 10 could do.
Wow.
It wasn't until years later, with better technology,
Right.
that he revisited it.
He was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, and realized just how special it was.
It makes you wonder how many other Code 10s are out there,
Right.
hidden in plain sight,
Yeah.
because we don't have the right tools or perspective yet.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, enough teasing.
Okay.
What does this code actually do?
So, at its core,
Yeah.
Code 10 is deceptively simple.
Okay.
Picture a line of black and white cells. Each cell looks at its two neighbors on either side, 5 in total.
Got it.
If exactly 1 or 3 of those cells are black, the middle cell becomes black in the next step.
Okay.
Otherwise, it turns white.
Simple.
Simple. Easy. Right.
Yeah, I think I could handle that much coding.
Yeah.
So where does the mind-blowing part come in?
Well, when you repeat this rule over and over,
Okay.
starting with even a single black cell,
Yeah.
the patterns that emerge,
Yep.
they become incredibly complex,
Wow.
almost random looking.
Really?
You simply can't predict what will happen just by knowing that basic rule.
That's where the idea of computational irreducibility comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like, even though the rule is simple,
Yes.
the only way to see how it plays out is to actually run the simulation.
Exactly.
Right? No shortcuts.
No shortcut.
Wow.
Yeah, it challenges our intuition
Okay.
that complex results must have complex causes.
Right.
Code 10 shows us that even incredibly simple rules
Yeah.
can lead to extraordinary complexity,
Right.
which has some pretty big implications.
Like what?
Well, for example, imagine trying to guess the plot of an entire novel
Okay.
just from reading the first sentence.
Right.
You might get a few things right, but
Yeah.
the actual story
Yeah.
could unfold in countless unexpected ways.
You're right. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So we've got this rule,
Yes.
Code 10,
The Code 10.
that seems to generate randomness
Yeah.
out of thin air.
Uh-huh.
But here's where things get really intriguing.
Okay.
Wolfram found
Yeah.
that if you start with certain specific initial conditions,
Mm.
a completely different pattern emerges.
Wow.
A nested pattern.
Interesting.
It's like finding a perfectly symmetrical snowflake in the middle of a blizzard.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
And this is where Code 10 starts to reveal its hidden depths.
Okay.
Within the seeming randomness, there are pockets of order, hints of a deeper structure,
Wow.
lurking beneath the surface.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this rule Code 10
Right.
that seems to generate randomness out of thin air,
Yeah.
but then throws us this curveball
Yeah.
with these unexpected pockets of order.
Right.
What's the explanation for that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And it
Yeah.
gets even stranger.
Uh-huh.
Remember how Wolfram talked about the density of black cells and the patterns?
Right.
Basically, how much of the overall picture
Yeah.
is black versus white.
Right. You'd think with all that seeming randomness, it
Yeah.
would all just average out, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But it turns out
Yeah.
that the density of those black cells,
Mm.
it can actually change
Really?
significantly,
Wow.
depending on the initial conditions.
Really?
Specifically, whether you begin with an even or odd number of black cells.
Hold on. What?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
How can something so small,
I know.
the initial setup,
Right.
have such a noticeable impact
Yeah.
on these massive, complex patterns that emerge?
That's the beauty of it.
Wow.
It's another example of how sensitive these computational systems can be
Okay.
to seemingly insignificant details.
Right. Yeah.
Like a butterfly flapping its wings
Yeah.
and causing a hurricane on the other side of the world.
Wow.
A tiny change at the beginning can lead to drastically different outcomes.
Right.
You see, this challenges our intuition about cause and effect.
All right.
We assume big changes need big causes.
Right.
But Code 10 shows even tiny tweaks at the start can have huge consequences down the line.
It makes you wonder, like,
Yeah.
I used to think I understood how the universe worked.
Right.
Now I'm not even sure I understand my breakfast cereal.
Exactly.
This density dilemma.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does.
How much of our Onimian lives are shaped
Right.
by seemingly insignificant choices we made way back when.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it speaks to the power of these simple rules to generate incredible complexity and unpredictability.
Okay, before we get too lost in the weeds of Code 10,
Okay.
let's zoom out for a second.
Okay.
How does this all tie back to that other famous rule Wolfram mentioned? Rule 30.
Ah. Rule 30. The celebrity of the cellular automata world.
Right.
And there's a good reason for that.
Okay.
You see both Code 10 and Rule 30.
Yeah.
They beautifully illustrate this concept
Yeah.
of computational irreducibility.
Right.
They're both simple rules that generate unbelievable complexity.
Yeah.
They're like siblings
Right.
with distinct personalities but cut from the same cloth.
So they're like two sides of the same coin showing
Yeah.
us different facets of this bigger idea.
Precisely.
Okay.
They both demonstrate that
Yeah.
you can't always predict the outcome of a system just by knowing the rules.
Right.
You have to let it run its course and see what unfolds.
Wow.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Even though they share this fundamental characteristic,
Yeah.
Code 10 and Rule 30 have their own quirks,
Okay.
their own unique ways of expressing complexity.
Wow, that's so interesting.
It's what makes exploring this whole field so exciting.
So both Code 10 and Rule 30 demonstrate this idea of computational irreducibility,
Yeah.
but they also have their own, you said, unique quirks and personalities.
Right. What makes Code 10 stand out
Yeah.
from its more famous sibling?
Yeah, what is it?
Well, one of the key differences is symmetry.
Right.
The patterns Code 10 creates,
Yeah.
they're mirror images of themselves,
Oh, wow.
which isn't the case with Rule 30.
Okay.
And remember those nested patterns we talked about? Those seem to be much more common in Code 10
Really?
than in Rule 30.
It's like they both speak the same language of complexity,
Yeah.
but with different dialects and accents.
Exactly. That's what makes this entire field so captivating.
Right?
Each rule, each variation.
Yeah.
It's like discovering a new country
Wow.
with its own unique landscapes and features.
That's a great analogy.
It's a vast, unexplored universe of computational possibilities,
Wow.
just waiting for us to uncover them.
And that's what Wolfram calls Ruliology,
Right?
the science of studying these simple rules and their often mind-boggling consequences.
And it's not just an academic exercise either.
Right?
This has implications for how we understand everything,
Wow.
from the evolution of the universe to the
Yeah.
behavior of financial markets.
Well-
If simple rules can create so much complexity,
Right.
imagine what that means for the incredibly complex systems we see in the real world.
Right. It really makes you think if something as basic as Code 10 can generate such intricate, unpredictable patterns.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about the forces shaping our world?
Yeah.
Our own lives, even.
It really does.
Mhm.
It suggests that complexity can arise from very simple origins,
Right.
and that even tiny changes in those initial conditions
Right.
can have a ripple effect.
Like that butterfly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leading to vastly different outcomes.
Wow.
It's a humbling and awe-inspiring thought.
So after spending all this time with Wolfram in the land of Code 10,
Yeah.
what's the one thing that's really stuck with you?
You know, for me, it's the sense of wonder,
Okay.
that feeling of almost unlimited potential. We often think of science as this process of breaking things down, dissecting them to find the smallest parts.
Yeah.
But Ruliology flips that on its head.
Okay.
It's about starting with something incredibly simple
Right.
and then watching in awe as it blossoms into something far greater than the sum of its parts.
And realizing that even with all our fancy algorithms and supercomputers,
Yeah.
there's still an element of mystery, of unpredictability,
Right.
woven into the very fabric of computation.
Precisely.
We'll
And
get-
that's not a limitation.
Yeah.
It's an invitation. It's an invitation to keep exploring, to keep asking what if,
Oh.
and to be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah.
Because in the world of Ruliology,
Yeah.
the most exciting discoveries are often the ones we never saw coming.
So to wrap things up for our listeners, if something as seemingly simple as Code 10 can hold such incredible complexity and surprise,
Yeah.
What other hidden depths are waiting to be uncovered in the vast universe of computational rule?
Right. It makes you just wonder.
And how might those discoveries change the way we see the world around us? Something to ponder. That's it for a deep dive into the world of Code 10. Thanks for joining us on this mind-bending journey.